Alrighty. Good afternoon, everybody. I think we're going to get started here. So a warm welcome to everybody. My name is Sarah Steiner. For those of you who haven't chatted with me before, I'm one of PiinPoint's customer success managers and really excited to be showing you some of the new look and feel that has been released to PiinPoint this week. We're going to be focusing specifically on a new look and feel to the POI panel and the base maps panel. And we'll go through this in a little bit more detail in just a minute, but I wanted to call out any audio sort of details in case you're having trouble connecting to audio. Within the join.me, which is where our webinar is hosted today, you can either click on that little green microphone at the top of the join me, or you can dial into one of the available conference numbers. Just one more little housekeeping item before we really dive in here. You'll notice that you're on mute right now. So if you have questions throughout the webinar, what we'll ask you to do is put those into the chat space within the Join Me conference meeting. And we will monitor chat to make sure that any questions that come up are addressed as we go through, specifically at our Q&A opportunities. So throughout the webinar, the next 30 minutes, there'll be a couple times when you can have your questions answered. So feel free to type in any questions that are popping into your mind. Alrighty, so in terms of an agenda, what we're going to look at is what's changed so far and how it's going to help you. So if you've already attended one of these redesign webinars, you know that we've been rolling out a series of changes to PiinPoint to help make it more user-friendly and intuitive for yourself and your team members. So any changes that we're making are with your best interest in mind. So I'm going to do a really brief recap on those changes that we've seen so far. We'll spend at most 5 minutes just going through those in case you haven't seen them yet. Then we'll tour the new layout and design so you know what's new as of this week. We'll look at some new features that have been released or will be released to your account soon. And then we'll do another Q&A, and we'll have a couple other opportunities for questions and answers as well throughout, and then talk a little bit about what's coming up next. So let's just get started in doing that recap. So one of the main things that you've probably noticed by now is that the report menus have changed. You now have a snapshot that shows what's included in each report, whether that's a single site report or a comparison report that you build. We also have changed the editability of shapes. So I have a drive time shape and a ring series on my map here, and you can see that as you hover over the map or the shape itself, each point in the polygon becomes editable. So you could click on one of those little white boxes and drag the shape around to either readjust the radius of the rings or extend or minimize your polygon shape. We've also made sharing your work in PiinPoint a little bit easier so you can better collaborate with your team members. Any shapes that you have drawn, you can actually share with someone else on your team. So all you have to do is click Share Shape, which you'd see on the context menu there, and then from the drop-down list, choose someone else on your team to send maybe a series of territories to, or some work that you've been doing in identifying different trade areas that would be interesting to further pursue. Once, those are some new features and changes that you'll see on the map view. We're also changing each of the feature panels along the left-hand side. So the first one that you saw changed was the target market panel. Basically, there's just some simplified functionality there and a few new components. So you can see that the ability to change whether a variable is desirable or undesirable is right there in your list. So you just click on the word desirable, and then you can say whether or not that criteria has a positive or negative correlation to your successful markets. And then you can show, when you're looking at the heat map, you can either show every single block group or DA in an area, or you can narrow in on the top 40 blocks, the top 20, the top 5, and be a little bit more specific in which areas are actually the best performing. This is what that would look like if you were to show the top 40 blocks. We're in Vegas here. You can see the top 40 blocks from a demographic standpoint if we're looking at total population and average household size. So those show us the top 40, and then within those top 40, they also will rank them from 1 to 40. So you really can get a sense of which one is number 1 versus 11th on the list and so on. Beyond that, lots of changes to the context menus. So if you click on any shape now, you'll see on the right-hand side we've got the updates. On the left-hand side, you'll recognize maybe some old user interface that's no longer in PiinPoint. So these panels are just a lot easier to navigate now, and there's a couple new functionalities, including that share shape and the ability to change the size of your rings on the fly. And then again, your target market panel is updated, the heat map is updated. It's no longer just showing the top 5 in red, it's showing the top 5, 10, 20, or 40 with, again, your ranked listing. And then the overview panel as well has been updated to show more variables. So it's no longer just based on the top 3. You're going to get every single criteria that's within your target market panel showing up as a demographic overview. So that's a whirlwind review of what we've shared and released so far. We covered those in greater detail in our previous webinars, so if you would like to see them in detail, feel free to check out our help center, help.piinpoint.com, and there's recordings of those webinars there for you. At this point, let's go ahead and move on to the new stuff. So the focus here for today's webinar is really understanding what we've changed within the POI panel, the base maps panel, and what we now have is a traffic panel. So we'll do a review here and then take a look at it within PiinPoint. What you see here is the old and new POI panel. So on the left-hand side, you can see we used to make you specify whether you were looking for a name or a category. So a name would be something like Starbucks. A category would be something like cafe, coffee, and tea houses. These are probably categories that you're familiar with from using your account. What you do now is simply look for any keyword, whether it's a name, whether it's just a keyword or a category, using a single search bar. So what you can do is just type in social, food, and dining. Maybe you're looking for Mexican restaurants. Maybe you just want to search for specific brands like your Chipotle. Those are all just within one bar, so you don't have to specify. And once you start typing, you'll see all of those same results that popped up before show up as well. The other change within the POI panel that I'll just call out here, and we'll take a look at it again in PiinPoint in a minute, is the wording around exact search. So for those of you who aren't familiar with exact search, we use that as the ability to filter in on the results that you get when you're looking for certain POIs. So for example, if I was looking for something like a brand name like Mark's Work Warehouse, that's a pretty long name. It's got an apostrophe in there. There's some specific spelling that you want to make sure you get. So what exact search would do if you turned it on is only give you the results of POIs that were tagged exactly as you typed it in. If exact search was off, we'd be a little more lenient in terms of what results you see on the map. And that's the default because we want to err on the side of caution that you get more results than less, and then you can pick through which ones aren't relevant if that's the case. So what we've done now is changed that wording to strict filter. I think that makes a lot more sense just in terms of an intuitive function. And that check mark is just underneath your on and off filter there. So strict filtering is going to narrow your search results, and you're going to see less results if the strict filter is on. The other change to POIs that just goes with the panel is the legend. So in the bottom right-hand corner, you always have your different legends, whether it's for layers, your stores, or POIs. And you'll just see that it's a little bit simpler. You can easily turn them all on and off. Any actions are along the top-hand panel. And then you can also do clustering or a heat map. So clustering was there before. The heat map is new and something that we'll take a look at in a minute. For base maps, what we've done is renamed it. So the base maps panel is now called traffic, and you'll see it's symbolized by a couple of cars, a little car icon. And what we've done is taken base maps out of that traffic panel and put it as a map tile in the right bottom hand corner of your screen. So if you're down by those legends, you'll see there's a little square box that looks like a map. If you click on it, it's going to give you the exact same choices that you had before to look at different maps, but this time it's on your map. You can access it at any time, and it's not thrown in with several other functions that were within our base maps panel. So just making things a little bit cleaner, a little bit more intuitive. And then traffic is, again, it's just about traffic. So if you were to bring in, to be doing a training for a new member of your team, and you're trying to explain the platform to them, traffic is one of those key components of your research that you're probably incorporating into a lot of your reports and maps. And so now that icon is just right there, it's quite clear that if you click on base maps or traffic, you're going to be looking at traffic data. So those are the big changes that you'll see around the panels. There's two new features I want to introduce, and then we're going to actually take a look at them within the tool. So the first thing is looking at POI density. So I'm in Toronto here within this screenshot, and we're looking at all of the cafes, coffee, and tea houses within Toronto. Instead of just having them show up as pins on a map, because with a category like this, you're going to get several hundred results. In this case, you can see I have over 1,000 different cafes, coffee, or tea houses within this map view. So lots of data. The heat map is here to make that information more clear around where those clusters and clumps of POIs, where are there actually more, and not just a myriad of logos that we need to try to understand. So the heat map is something that you can turn on, like I showed earlier, through the POI legend. So if you've turned on your POI, it's a name or category is fine. If you navigate down to the bottom right-hand corner where you have your points of interest legend, it's just a simple check of the heat map box there. And then you'll be able to see this incredible visualization of essentially where there is more density of the category or name that you're looking at. So we'll take a look at that in a minute. The second feature that's going to be rolled out to your accounts within the coming weeks is the ability to look at demographic ratios. So demographic ratios allow you to understand sort of like a cross, the intersection of a point of interest and a demographic criteria. So we could look at something like daytime population, and we can look at things like cafe, coffee, and tea houses. But what do we know about, for however many people there are during, let's say, Toronto during the day, how many people would be allocated per each coffee shop if we were to distribute all things equally? So what we've done with demographic ratios is shown you just that. So what you can see here is that for the 93 cafe, coffee, and tea houses that I would have identified within my radius or my drive time or just a random polygon, there are about 2,200 people during the day within that area. So it comes out to about, for the 93 locations, about 2,200 daytime population per each location. So that's what your demographic ratios is looking at. We could do the same thing, for any other variable. So we could look at something like number of households per hospital or per school. We could look at the number of dollars spent on something like food per restaurant. So there's lots of different things that you can play around with there, and you'll be getting a notification within the coming weeks when you can access this tool as well. I'll be showing you where you can access it in just a minute, and we'll do a little bit more explaining. All right, so let's actually log into PiinPoint now and take a look at these features in their account. So what you can see here now is my map of Toronto. I am in Toronto again. And we'll start just by looking quickly at the new look and feel of the panels. So I mentioned this traffic panel. You can see here now that traffic is not base maps. It is looking at traffic specifically. And from here, we can see our model traffic counts, our municipal traffic counts, and our traffic congestion data. So we can toggle those on and off right here. Primarily before, this would have been the same data, but then we also would have seen base maps information in here. So now if you want to access that base maps data, you're going to navigate down to the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, click on this little map tile, and you'll see every single option that was previously within the base maps tool is now in this collection here. So we could change over to looking at public transit data for Toronto, seeing things like subway lines, train lines, bus routes. We could look at satellite imagery with roads or without roads. And then, our detailed roadmap. So there's lots of options here, as you know, but just a little bit different space to navigate to, and it makes it a bit easier to quickly flip and flop between different base maps that have maybe information that you need on each of them. We'll go back to our Google roadmap here for now. Let's take a look at the changes to the points of interest panel. So if we come up here to POIs, similar to the screenshot that I shared with you, as you can see, nice simplified look here, especially with the single search bar. So it's the exact same as before. We haven't changed the functionality here. We've just really made it easier for you to access POI data. So we could look for things by name, by keyword, or by the category. So we just click in the bar and start typing whatever that point of interest is that we're interested in looking for. So I could go ahead and bring in something like McDonald's. And as I start typing, you'll see here that McDonald's, the Golden Arches, infamous brand that we all know, pops up as the first suggestion, and then a couple other things that maybe have similar text within them. So we'll give other suggestions. So we can type in McDonald's. Let's select that here. And then as we search, we'll just let these load in here for a second. And I'll demonstrate the ability to look at strict filtering. So with McDonald's, it is a very well-known brand. There are also other people with the last name of McDonald's. So in some cases, you might see POIs that are, Tory McDonald's law firm or dentist office, things like that. So the strict filter is going to be what will weed out those sort of other POIs that you don't want to see. Let's just toggle on a couple other POIs here. One thing you'll notice that we've added when you're searching for names or categories is a loading bar. So you can see there's a little spinning wheel beside each POI as the brands are loading in, and as well as the categories. Now for categories specifically, I'm going to zoom in a little bit further so it doesn't take quite so long to bring in all the results for Toronto. We're going to have lots of cafe, coffee, and tea houses here to look at. Oof, here they come. So what you can see here now is we've increased the number of results that you can search for at a given time. So I'm pretty far zoomed out here, but still able to load in over 1,400 different cafe, coffee, and tea house brands, which is pretty incredible. We've clustered those POIs into boxes so that you're not inundated with so much data at once. And what these little clustered boxes mean is just they're summarizing a specific area. So if I hover over this one here, you can see there's a little polygon that appears to indicate what area it actually is referring to. Now, this is a lot of data. If we wanted to, we could take the cluster off. So we could navigate down to that POI legend and we could uncluster the results, or we could look at a heat map. So this is where the heat map comes in handy. If I toggle this on, I now can see that, okay, the density of POIs for cafe, coffee, tea houses, Starbucks, and McDonald's is primarily in the downtown core. I've got a little bit more up here in Yonge and Eglinton and along some major routes. So we've got Queen Street and the Danforth. There are more businesses along those main retail byways. So that's what this density heat map is showing you. If there are more, you're going to be looking towards a red, yellow kind of color, or hotter hotter kind of color to indicate hot spots. If there are less, you're going to be looking at the purple, the blues, that cooler kind of indication that there are fewer POIs of that type. So I'm going to turn this off for now, and we'll actually toggle off this POI category too, just so that we see a little bit less information. And we'll close off the McDonald's as well and speak to our final product improvement that we've released here. So we've talked about strict filtering. We've talked about being able to toggle things all off and all on at once. The last thing that I'm just going to speak to here is being able to look at ratios. So that demographic ratio feature I spoke to earlier, where you can see the number of people or number of dollars or number of households per POI, is accessible from within your POI panel. So when you want to do this, what you'll just do is click on Add Demographic Ratio. You'll be able to pick from any selection of variables that are within your target market panel. And then what you just have to do is draw a shape. So we could do something like a polygon around, maybe around the Discovery District in Toronto. And then we would click on Show Demographic Overview. So that's it in a nutshell. So you draw your shape, make sure you have your target market criteria selected, and then you'd come in here and specify which variables you wanted to look at ratios for. All right. So just a quick recap. Changes to the POI panel. We've simplified this here. Haven't removed any functionality, just moved things around a little bit to make it more intuitive. Your traffic panel is now purely just traffic, no base maps. And base maps have come down here into your bottom right-hand corner. I'm going to come back into our slideshow here. And before we do our Q&A, I'll just speak a little bit to what's coming up next. You can see we've been working through our different feature panels along the left-hand side of your PiinPoint account. So what we'll be doing next is updating the layers and locations features, and then wrapping up everything with a little bit of a different look and feel. So making the map cleaner and a little bit more intuitive overall. So keep your eyes peeled for other updates there. We'll be sure to let you know via your chat, via email, and reach outs from myself and the rest of the customer success team. All right, let's do some Q&A. We're going to take a look here, see if there's been some questions that have come in. Happy to answer those now. Or you're also welcome to start exploring in your accounts and ask us questions as they come up. So let's just take a look here. It looks like there's no questions so far, so everything's been, I guess, clear as mud. I'll just give another second here for other questions to come in. And while we're waiting for those, I'll just give a quick shout out to point to some other resources that you can always refer to if you do have questions. So the PiinPoint Help Center, you can find it at help.piinpoint.com. And it's a great place to come to if you want to look at something like a quick start guide or videos, how-to posts. We've got lots of different resources here depending on how you learn best. And it's quite easy to navigate. You can either search through our collections or you can look for answers just by typing in a keyword along the top search bar there. So feel free to use this as well. It looks like, let's just see, it looks like there's no other questions that have come in, so that's totally fine. Happy to answer those later. If anybody has questions, feel free to reach out to myself or your customer success manager and we can help you out there. All right, well, that is it for today. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Really, really appreciate you taking your time out of a Friday afternoon. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. Thanks, everybody.